Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled nightmare father changed the locks in my house and evicted me from my own property after I was nice enough to let him stay at my place and gave him shelter. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. So me and my old man never really had a great relationship. He was an overly aggressive control freak and thought he knew everything and tried to dominate every aspect of my life. From what friends I hung out with to what clubs I went to and what subjects I chose later in school. There was this one time I happened to mention in passing that I liked the idea of becoming a chef with no actual intention of ever becoming a chef. I wanted to be an engineer, telecommunications or structural or something. I just liked cooking my own food from time to time and enjoyed it. I don't know what it was about me becoming a chef, but my dad thinks it's a great idea and then went on to dictate the course of my school life to becoming a chef. In the end, I joined the army just to get away from him and never really spoke to him since. That was until the whole pandemic thing started. By then I had my fill of the military life and had left for a more chill civilian life. I was living in a nice part of the country, looking out over the coast and doing quite well for myself in network engineering. The last I had spoken to my father was just before I quit the army. I thought for some reason he might be able to provide me with some actual guidance and courage, but no. All he had left to say was that I was gonna be throwing my life away if I left and I put in all that work for nothing and so on. Anyway, a few years on and the pandemic hits. Like most, I lose a lot of work and I'm budgeting like crazy, doing what I can from home. It's not too bad, but I could do with a little extra as I had just bought a house and would be struggling if the lockdown lasted too long. Luckily, I get a call from my dad. He tells me that he needs somewhere to stay as he is having to camp out in fields, all the camping grounds have been closed down and he is stuck. As much as I have it in for my old man, he is still my father and I would help him anyway anytime. After some precautions, testing and whatnot, I let him stay at my house, so as long as he paid towards the bills he was happy enough with that, and so we settled in for the long haul. It was alright at first, his universal credits paid up each month. We set it up so that he was considered my tenant, so the benefits got paid straight into my account after signing up on some paperwork. Once the lockdown was done, he would move on. Had I known it was gonna take years for things to get back to normality, I would never have taken him in. When I asked him about why he couldn't go back home, he tells me that he sold it and all of his stuff. He is now one of these free livers or something, people that live off the grid, off the land sort of thing. I thought he meant a commune, but nope, he is just a drifter, or maybe a grifter, not sure. Every now and then he rents a room at a travel lodge or a bed and breakfast or something to get cleaned up and stuff, spends most nights at a cheap campsite. He was always a little vague on why he decided to be one of these people that live off the land, mumbling some incoherent crap about zero carbon footprint, and honestly, I should have been more persistent and suspicious of this. But being my old man, I could hardly grill him on his own affairs. The thing is, since the lockdown, all the campsites, holiday parks and whatnot have all closed down, so he has nowhere to pitch his tent. He tells me that he got chased from a farmer's field more than a few times and even had one shoot at him. So the months drag on, things get tense between us, but the house is a decent size enough that we don't have to be in too close proximity to each other, but it's still a little awkward. The lockdowns go by fine and life slowly gets back to normal. My dad talks about getting out into the countryside again and I start looking for work. I get a job out in South Korea for a month or so I, for some stupid reason, ask my dad if he would like to house sit for a little while. He is more than enthusiastic about the idea and once again I get a little niggle at the back of my mind, and I should have listened to that niggle. I keep in touch with my father and make sure everything is okay, and at first he is telling me the going-ons with the house, how things are faring, and everything is fine. Till last week, things are getting a little vague and distant, and I'm crapping myself that something is wrong. Confirmation hits when I manage to get home, and only I cannot get in my home. The locks have been changed. I call a locksmith and by the time he gets to my house, my father has also come home and sees me. He starts shooting off at me, telling me to stop harassing him and the like. I'm so bloody confused, I don't even know what to say or do. I'm trying to find out why he has changed the locks, but just keeps shouting for me to stop harassing him. I get the police involved and the locksmith is not touching the door as he does not think I have the right to change the locks, and when the police do arrive, they defuse the situation and start interviewing everyone. The poor locksmith is looking so lost. About an hour of talking and debating, it turns out that I cannot do anything as the tenant has a right to change the locks if he feels he is being harassed by the landlord. He even has a record of all the messages on his phone that I've sent him and all the phone calls I've been making, checking on the house. I couldn't believe it. My head goes into a wild spin and I feel like I'm in EastEnders or something. It made my stomach churn. As I'm talking to solicitors about this, renting a bloody room above a takeaway, feeling like crap, I wonder if things could get worse. I had tried to get some of my stuff back, but my father tells me that he does not want to see me around his house anymore, or else he will kill me. He has some BS legal right to defend himself. He literally evicted me from my own property. So I'm having to use the public library to get on the internet. I've had to buy all new clothes, and as I'm in talks with a solicitor, and they inform me that my father has accumulated over $300,000 in debt. The sort of debt the banks would seize a house over and all its contents. So not only am I under the threat of losing my house to my father, but there's the very real chance that he stole my house from me so that the banks would seize it and finally be clear of his debt. I mean, seriously, you could not make this up. Even if you were one of those writers on Coronation Street or some other really cheap naff soap opera. The best I could hope for, seeing as we were in a tenant-landlord relationship, was to have him evicted. So I went through the legal channels, set up a routine inspection sort of thing, and drum up every reason to have him kicked out. I couldn't believe it when it actually worked. One of the key clauses of renting is that the tenant has to make sure they maintain the property they are staying in, and my house was not looked after in the slightest. So I immediately wrote out the eviction notice. I tell you, justice never tasted sweeter than when my old man tried to contest the eviction and even took it to the civil courts. I was worried at first, but my solicitor assured me there was no chance that he was gonna win. God bless my solicitor for this, but he even said he would bring my father's debt to the court's attention. Now, not only is my father homeless again, but he doesn't have any assets for the banks to seize. He had to do community service instead. The only downside was that my house was in a damn awful mess. The day my dad was forced out of my house was one of the best of my life, but seeing what he had done to my beautiful home left me fuming. I decided then and there that I wasn't done making my scumbag father pay for what he did to me. So I pressed charges against him and took him to court for illegal eviction, threats of violence, squatting, and destruction of property. My lawyer presented evidence of the debt he accrued and suspected fraud. In the end, the court ordered him to pay damages, sentenced him to 15 months in jail for the threats and eviction, and assigned him 200 hours extra of community service for the property damage. It felt so good to get justice. My father thought he could walk all over me, but I did not back down. Now he is sitting in jail thinking about what a horrible thing he did to his own son. Maybe someday he will come out a changed man, but I'm sure as hell not holding my breath. I'm just glad I stood up for myself and proved he couldn't get away with stealing my home. The law came down on my side in the end, and that's all that matters. The next one is titled, HOA fined me for not mowing my unused farmland. I could not believe the letter I received in the mail. It was from the Oak Hills Homeowners Association, fining me $200 for not keeping my unused farmland properly maintained. The thing is, I'm not even a member of this Oak Hills HOA. My name is John and I own a small farm just outside the Oak Hills development. My property shares a border with the HOA, but that's about it. I have lived here peacefully for 15 years, tending my cows and growing crops on my 50 acres of land. Oak Hills is one of those fancy neighborhoods with rules for everything, aka what color you can paint your shutters, when you can put up holiday decorations, all that crap. I chose to live outside of it for a reason. The letter stated that I had 2 weeks to mow and maintain my field adjacent to their neighborhood, or I would continue accruing fines. It was signed by Gary Willis, the president of the HOA. Can you believe the nerve of this guy? I didn't know who he thought he was, but I was not about to be bullied into mowing land I use for grazing cattle and growing feed. The next weekend, I saw Gary out for a stroll in the neighborhood. He waved politely as he walked by my farm. I marched right up to him and got in his face about the ridiculous letter. Just what do you think you're trying to pull, sending me fines for land that I don't even have to maintain for you? I asked him point blank. He got a little flustered but quickly recovered. "Well, John, I understand this is your property, but we really must insist you keep the area next to our neighborhood trimmed and orderly. We strive for a clean-cut image here at Oak Hills." I could not believe his audacity. "Listen here, Gary, I'm no member of your HOA and this is my private farmland. I'll do with it as I please and don't take kindly to threats disguised as fines." At this point, Gary started to get angry. "Now, you see here, we have standards to uphold. Do you realize property values will plummet if it looks like we have to live next to an unkept junk heap? I don't care if you're a part of our HOA or not. You will maintain that field or I'll see to it your fines increase tenfold." Now it was my turn to get angry. This pompous blowhard had some nerve trying to tell me what to do on my own damn property. "Is that so? I would like to see you try and enforce your little threats," I spat back. "This is my land that I use for my farm. I don't have time to waste mowing a perfect lawn just to appeal to your ridiculous standards." Gary's face turned red with anger. "You will regret this, John. I'll make sure you learn your place around here." And with that he turned and stormed off. I'll admit the guy's threats worried me a bit, but I tried not to think about it too much over the next few days. Then the following week I got another letter stating that I now owed $1,000 in fines for failure to maintain my property per HOA guidelines. And there was another letter taped to my door saying I had 24 hours to complete the mowing or the fines would go up to $5,000. Now I was really seeing red. There was no way I was caving to this nonsense. I decided it was time to do some digging into Gary Willis and his heavy-handed HOA tactics. A few conversations with some Oak Hill residents revealed that Gary had angered a lot of folks with his aggressive governance. They said Gary was known to target and harass anyone who did not toe the line. One person even claimed that they suspected him of embezzling HOA dues, but no one had been able to prove it. Armed with this new information, I came up with a plan to turn the tables on Gary. I decided I would pretend to finally cave to his demands about the mowing. The next day, I left Gary a message saying I would take care of the field per his instructions. As I expected, a smug Gary appeared at my property line just as I finished up the last stretch of mowing later that day. "Well, John, I'm glad you finally came to your senses," he gloated, clearly taking pleasure in my perceived submission. "Yeah, Gary, you really convinced me that I need to keep this place looking tidy," I said, laying it on thick. "In fact, I was hoping we could get a drink in town later so I could learn more about how your HOA operates. I figure it could help prevent any misunderstandings in the future." Gary readily agreed to meet me at a bar later that evening, obviously eager to assert his authority further. Once we were both settled at a table with drinks, it was time to put my plan into motion. "You know, Gary, I would love to see a copy of the Oak Hills bylaws if you have them handy," I said innocently. "I want to be sure I know all the rules so there are no issues in the future." "Of course, I just happen to have a copy right here," Gary replied, pulling a document from his jacket pocket and handing it over. I scanned through the pages buying time while I was recording our conversation on my phone in my lap. After a few minutes of pretending to read, I looked back up. "This is great, but I don't see anything that says you can dictate what I do on my own private property. Can you show me where it says that?" Gary's smug expression wavered slightly and he shifted in his seat. "Well, it doesn't explicitly state that per se, but as a president I have discretion to enforce the standards however I see fit." I decided to push him further. "Interesting. You know, another thing I was told is that some people suspect you of misusing HOA dues. Any truth to that?" At this point, Gary turned red and slammed his fist down on the table angrily. "Who told you such lies? I've done no such thing. The HOA money goes towards neighborhood beautification and events, nothing more. Anyone who tells you otherwise is a liar." I held up my hands in a calming gesture and said, "Hey, sorry man, no need to get all worked up. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation." After that, Gary seemed eager to wrap up our chat and hurried out shortly after finishing his drink. I thanked him for his time and promised I would stay on top of my field, but I had what I needed. The next week, I submitted copies of the HOA bylaws as well as the recordings of Gary's lies and temper to the County HOA Oversight Board along with a formal complaint. A few weeks later, I received notice that Gary had been removed as president pending an audit of the HOA's accounting records. It turns out my hunch was right and the audit uncovered clear evidence he had siphoned off nearly $15,000 in HOA dues to his personal accounts over the last several years. Gary was arrested and charged with fraud and embezzlement settlement. I also made sure the sheriff paid him a visit to inform him all fines against me had been invalidated and any attempt to bill me further would constitute harassment. Last I heard, Gary was sentenced to 2 years in prison and had to pay back all the money he stole with interest. Oak Hills got a new HOA president who seems much more reasonable, and they no longer bother me about my property on their border. All's well that ends well, I guess. My little farmland taught that corrupt HOA president a lesson he won't soon forget. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. When I moved cities a few months ago, I rented an apartment on a monthly contract while looking for another one to buy. A couple months in, the owner told me that she will be putting it on the market, so she will be needing my schedule to arrange showings. I offered to buy it, and not even 2 weeks later, I was the owner of my own apartment. I live in the second floor, and the first floor is owned by a family, father, mother and 2 teen boys, and the ground floor is 2 garages for cars and 1 for each owner. And finally, the roof is split into 2 roofs with an 8-foot wall and separate doors off of the landing. When I bought my house, I wanted to redo the kitchen and bathroom, so I took some cookies and knocked on my neighbor's house door to ask for their schedule. I did not want to do work while they were at home to avoid bothering them. That day, I was in my balcony and heard the husband complaining about me buying the apartment. Apparently they were planning to do so, but I beat them to it. Now fast forward a couple of months and I've turned my roof into a garden with raised beds for my veggies, pots for flowers, some garden furniture and an area with some wooden outside tiles. While coming out one day, I met my neighbor and she asked to see the garden with her sons. I showed it off and thought that was the end of it. That is until I started noticing how some of my flowers were cut, the furniture was moved, etc. So I installed a camera and saw that her sons jump over the dividing wall along with some friends and spent their time there. I told the parents and asked them to tell their kids to stop, that most of the time I'm not at home, and if something happened there is no way to open the door to help them, metal door with a huge padlock. They said okay, but the kids continued to do so. They even started destroying my plants for telling on them. So I gave their mother an ultimatum, they either stop or I'll be calling the cops. She scoffed and called me an entitled witch. The next time I got an alert on my phone, I called the cops and said someone broke into my rooftop garden. They came pretty fast and only one kid managed to escape. The other one was caught red-handed and taken to the precinct. Their father almost broke my door and started screaming at me to come and drop the charges. I just threatened to call the cops on him as well and went to bed. This morning I went to the precinct and dropped the charges, so he spent the night in their jail with, according to his mom, drug dealers and thugs. I was so sure of my decision that I was teaching him the consequences of his actions, but my mom said that I was too harsh. She said that I punished the parents, not that I taught the kid a lesson. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Do you think that OP is the a-hole here or not? Comment number 1, not the a-hole, not even remotely the a-hole. You talk to them and you talk to them again. They, instead of disciplining their kids, basically left you with no other choice. Hell, with that kind of attitude, frankly, you would still never be the a-hole even if you did not drop the charges. Probably shouldn't have. Probably should have called the cops on the father too. I know you need peace where you live, but they jumped so far over the reasonable behavior line that an Olympic vaulter would be jealous. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. Your neighbors are entitled a-holes and one day their son will get in more serious trouble and it will be all their fault. I would not have dropped the charges. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Male Karen steals veteran's handicap parking spot. As a handicapped veteran who is in a wheelchair, most people are kind to me. I got a prosthetic leg, so it does not bother me that every now and then I will get stared at. After all, it's mostly little kids and I am sure they are simply curious. Like I said, most people are exceedingly kind to me and even thank me for serving. But even I know that for every nice person in the world there is truly an evil person hiding in the dark. And those people? Well, those people are called Karens, except in my case it was a Ken. Although I am still pretty independent, my wonderful girlfriend helps me with a lot of things. She really is an angel. We frequently go grocery shopping together, and while to some people that may seem like a chore or what you are supposed to do, I just really appreciated her tagging along for simple stuff. It meant a lot to me. So we were on our routine weekend grocery trip and we were circling the parking lot trying to find a handicap place to park. I have the placard and everything because you know I wanna do what is right and follow the rules. My girlfriend finds a spot and turns on her blinker to signal she is turning into it. Well, at the same time, a car whips around the corner and almost hits this other car that is backing out of a parking space across from it. My girlfriend still has enough space to pull into the handicapped spot, so she starts pulling into it. Then the same car that whipped around the corner starts honking on his horn and throwing his hands up in the air as if saying, "What the heck?" We did not know what he was going crazy over, so my girlfriend pulled into the space completely. We thought maybe he was trying to park in the space across from us where the car just pulled out, but then he drove down the aisle and parked in the next row from us near the front. At this point, we just think maybe he was honking at the other car or something. I did not really know at the time, so we get out and my girlfriend is pushing me in my wheelchair, even though I am capable of maneuvering myself around, bless you honey, and the man that was honking approached us inside the grocery store. He ends up being an extreme male Karen, so we will just call him Ken. Ken, hello? Excuse me? Me realizing that he is indeed talking to me and my girlfriend. Can I help you with something? Ken, clearly not. You cannot even push yourself around. Gotta make your wife do it. Not gonna lie, it hurt my feelings. I'm a pretty tough guy. After all, you have to be if you're gonna serve. But I did have an insecurity about burdening my girlfriend being a badass and getting straight to the point. Look, what is the problem? That is no way to talk to someone, especially someone that you don't know. Ken, well, I'm going to talk to someone like that who steals my parking spot. I thought to myself, oh god, so that is where this was going. My girlfriend, how did we steal it from you? Were you already parked there? She was such a smartass sometimes, I really loved it. Ken, well, no, but I saw it first. Me, well, actually, you turned the corner after us. Besides, you don't even have a handicap placard in your window, so how were we supposed to know that you were going to park there? I kid you not, I almost lost it at the words that came out of his mouth next. Ken, well, I have to go buy a lot of stuff right now. I don't want to have to lug it all the way down the parking lot, so you guys better go move your car. I don't feel like walking. My girlfriend, did you not already walk in here? Besides, it must be nice to not want to walk. Some people don't have that option, you know. Speaking about me, obviously, and then me, so you really want all three of us to go waste our time, move our car and come back inside to shop like that is going to be convenient for you? You still gotta go back outside and move your car. Ken, I know what I said, smarty. Go move your car or I'm not leaving you alone. Do you think because you're disabled you're entitled to stuff? I chose to start ignoring him and so did my girlfriend because this was honestly ridiculous. There was no point in going outside and switching parking spots, nor was there any point in continuing the conversation/argument. This guy didn't want to push his groceries in a cart out in the parking lot, and yet I was the entitled one, apparently. Personally, I would kill to be able to walk down a parking lot pushing my groceries. People really do take advantage of things and do not even think twice about it. Besides that, he was wasting all of his time being a dick for no reason. I personally would never treat someone like that, especially not a stranger. Well, we go on our way and do our grocery shopping. Ken is still shopping around the store and when we finish, and he was not shy about sending us a dirty look. Well, when we go out to our car and see him parked in the next aisle over, we notice that Ken is actually parked in a handicapped spot. I also noticed that there was an elderly couple that was circling the parking lot and I almost wondered if they needed a handicapped spot to park in. So I told my girlfriend to pass me my phone because I was gonna report him and have his car towed from the parking lot. Petty? Maybe. Worth it? Absolutely yes. It just so happens that as the tow truck pulls up, Ken is finally finished grocery shopping and freaks out when he sees that the tow truck started to hook his car up. He also obviously sees my girlfriend and me standing near and asks us, "What the F is going on?" Unfortunately for Ken, neither my girlfriend nor I are afraid of a little confrontation. I explained to him very bluntly that I called to report him for using a handicapped spot when there was no handicap placard in his window. This is a major violation and it takes away from the people that really do need those parking spots. Well, Ken thinks he's going to get revenge on my girlfriend and I by calling the actual police on us, and yes, Ken called 911 on my girlfriend and I for reporting him. And then the police came. They were rather upset at him for unnecessarily calling 911, especially when he himself parked in a handicapped spot, which is absolutely not legal. Not only did Ken not get revenge, but his car did end up getting towed, which he had to pay a fee to get it out of the towing lot. And he had to pay a fine for parking in a handicapped spot with no placard. Revenge is best served sweet. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.